hit it. Okay,
This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Well, it's so nice to have you all here. We are going to complete the final 3 modules of the training today. So let's get started. Some others might join a little later, and that's fine. We'll catch them up. As I'm pulling up this to share, I'll mention if I heard in the chatting before we started that some people are having issues with Better Impact. I'm happy to help you if after you try with it for a while, if you get stuck, I'm happy to help. Or you can also send your clearances to my email, and that would be equally fine. So whatever you prefer. So let's get started. Today we're going to start with Module 7, which focuses on the duties of the Education Committee. So I thought we could start with some breakout rooms to discuss these questions. First, what challenges do you anticipate for children from refugee camps enrolling in Pittsburgh schools or any of the school districts in the surrounding areas? Also, similar question, what challenges do you anticipate for adults enrolling in ESL classes? And what challenges do you anticipate for the schools welcoming these new children enrolling? And also, what ideas do you have to overcome these challenges? So let's do some breakout rooms. So I'll stop sharing. And I'll give you about 5 minutes to discuss, and then we'll come back and share together. So I'll see you in about 5 minutes.
Hello? Hello. Wait till we get back from, I'm going to try to go get, hello. Well, we're not in the breakout room. We're until they get us back in. We can't do anything. I'm going to go get my plug.
Hi. I still can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me
Oh, yes, now. Sue, we've got them.
All right. So I think everyone will be coming back to the main room in just a moment. And then, here's your group.
What was the small group discussion?
It was about challenges that the refugee children and adults might have when beginning school and when beginning to learn English.
Good.
Yeah.
Battery. Sorry about that.
You figured it out though. That's cool. Good.
Yeah, so something was not happening with, I couldn't hear you guys. We're good. Okay.
Oh, John's joining our group. Oh, we're just all back in the main group now. I see. Got it. You're on mute, dear.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Looks like we're waiting a few more seconds for the rest of the people to join.
Whenever you go from one room to another, you get muted.
Are you trying to cheat?
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Does anyone want to share any challenges or ideas to help with adjusting to starting school for either children or adults?
Well, we talked mostly about language and mostly about children. We were lucky to have, is it Lindsay Walker, who is an ESL teacher in Baldwin and was giving us some insights that were, I thought, really helpful about what to expect and what she encounters.
And
Oh,
we
yeah.
talked.
Oh,
Go ahead, Alina.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I heard a little bit from your group and I was excited to hear that you're an ESL teacher. That's great. I am excited to hear more about that. And sorry, I cut someone off. I didn't see
I
who
was
it
just going to
was.
say, we talked about the fact that depending, we'd like to hope that whoever comes will be literate in their own language, but we don't know if they will have literacy, period, let alone in English. So that's two different. Lindsay, do you get a lot of that where you have the parents coming and the parents are not literate in their language?
Oh, yeah, the majority of my family. So like translating documents and things like that is not really helpful in my district. We use a lot of translators.
Yeah, that's great.
Our group also said something about Lindsay. We were like, thank goodness we have Lindsay.
Yeah. Oh. Barbara, you were muted.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I was just thinking, Lindsay, we asked Lindsay if there was an assigned person to greet the kids, and usually she is the one in the elementary school. And I was thinking here, you know, on the first day of school, parents usually take their children to school. And I was wondering if it would be helpful to have one of the people that are from our group to go with the parents and with the child to school for the first time. I don't know.
I think that would be a great idea. The Oakmont Presbyterian Church went with the mom and the child the first 2 days to make sure she knew the way to the school and felt comfortable. And on the third day, she said she felt comfortable going on her own. So they watched from afar just to make sure. And she did great.
That way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't normally go into the school though. I know we're in Peters and you can't go into the school unless you have a permit. I mean, there's a window you can go up and say hi, but you can't go in. So you would just sort of take the student to the door and they'd be on their own, I guess. Someone would greet them from within then.
Unless you talk with the principal ahead of time.
Yeah, and you'll have your clearances, Bobby.
Pardon?
That's an uncleared person. You will have your youth clearances.
Oh,
So
that's
that
true.
might get the school to say, oh, we understand the circumstances. We'll let you escort them to get them, you know, so that you can tell
Right.
where the gym is or the lunchroom or whatever you have to find.
Well, my experience is my grandson forgets his homework and then I have to take it in, but I'm not allowed in. So there's that. That's a different thing.
Some of the
I'll
schools
tell you, like
fill
in a
out a
school,
form and you show your ID and, you know, you can get cleared to go in. This is a long time ago, but I did that with the Vietnamese family. I went with each child and the mother to start school, and they
so
Even
depends
adults,
on
I
the
think,
age.
appreciate
If they're
that.
teenagers, they may not want you there.
So I know in Baldwin, yes, you have to have all your clearances to come into the building. And we just recently started letting like parents come back in. I don't know like if, you know, volunteers helping a family would be allowed to come in, but I will tell you my building is kindergarten and first grade, and there's like never a child that is coming into the building by themselves. There's always somebody taking them where they need to go and things like that. So they are well taken care of inside a school building. However, to like register for school, they might let somebody come with the family to register for school. And then they could probably take a tour. Like I know some families take tours of our building before they send their kids. So that might be an idea.
Yeah. In the other school districts, the principals are usually pretty good about allowing the family to come meet the principal and do a tour of the school ahead of time. such as when submitting their enrollment forms. And then the parents have a good idea of what the school will look like. So that's helpful.
Well,
No,
I was just saying we can maybe leverage Patrick McClintock-Camo, who is Alina's a member of our church and is the principal of one of the Upper St. Clair schools, and they all principals know each other pretty much, and he might be a good source to see if he had any suggestions for how we could make that happen.
Oh, that would be great.
This is Susan. I've worked a lot in different school districts, being an advocate for children, especially children that are unique for whatever reason they're unique. And I think all the administrative areas of any school district that you go to, when you register your child, if you have that private conversation and talk and say you want to have a chance to meet the teacher, depending on what age the child is, maybe there's multiple teachers, but being very proactive, having this educational committee, being very proactive, being the advocate for the child to meet the teachers, not only, of course, view the entire school, but even potentially having some conversations about how would make it more comfortable with the kids that are currently in the class and that child to get to know them. Maybe a 2-minute discussion on where that little child's from. If he's from ABC country, say, hey, you're bringing him in the first day and let's have a 2-second conversation with the other kids about where is little Joey's from. So just not only to help the child, but to help the other children assimilate with the child and being proactive and even encouraging this teacher to assign a buddy to that kid, a peer buddy that can be empathetic and be supportive of bringing them in the class. Sometimes the recess, if it's an elementary school student, or the cafeteria is the most scary place for a kid at all. There's a lot of things you can do. And I think the parent might not know those things, but our team could absolutely help facilitate, because I don't know any school I've ever been in with any kid that wasn't trying to make it good for the kid.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I think that the education committee would be really great support for helping the student feel comfortable at the school. Well, that's wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. I want to just briefly reassure you, if it seems like this is going a little fast, don't worry, because I will meet with the education committee again separately once the family has been matched with you to help you take these first steps. This is just to give you an idea what it will look like when it begins to happen. So first, I'm going to just talk about adult ESL classes. So JFCS partners with Literacy Pittsburgh for our ESL classes. And if the family members, the adults or the children, wanted additional ESL help, and there were people in your sponsorship group who wanted to tutor them, that would be wonderful. And I can help provide you with some ideas for what that could look like. Maybe some other people, like I know Lindsay is already an ESL teacher. If there are other ESL teachers who would want to share ideas, that would be great as well. But the process for signing up adults is really easy. There is just an email address that we send to Kirsten McGinley at Literacy Pittsburgh. We just say the name and some basic information about the adult who wants to sign up, including if they have children. And then after we sign up, you can use Calendly to choose a time to meet with Kirsten via Zoom or Google Meet. And you can be with your sponsored family during this meeting if you would like to be. She will just ask questions about them, just basic introductory questions to get to know them, help them feel a little comfortable, and then she'll give them a placement test. It's a spoken test. And many of the adults might not be able to answer any of the questions. That's totally okay. Ahead of time, we reassure them that if they want to pass every question because they don't know the answer, that's very normal. and it's fine. But they might speak some English, and if they do, they might be placed in a higher level. The most important thing is that we, meaning either JFCS or the sponsorship group, we will have to provide interpretation because Literacy Pittsburgh doesn't have the capacity to have interpretation. But it's pretty short. You can expect it will take about 15 to 30 minutes for this. After this appointment, there will be probably a few weeks when the adult is on a waiting list, but when a class is available, then they can start. And they will be given the option of in-person classes or online classes. And once you know better if this adult is going to be able to access the physical classroom easily and they're comfortable taking the bus versus are they more comfortable using technology from their home, you can help them choose what would be best for them. So for children who are refugees, the process is a little bit different than it would be for children who were born in the US. And not every school district is used to enrolling refugee children, so they may not be totally familiar with the differences. So they may ask for some documents that refugees don't typically have. We can provide them if we have them, but if we don't have them and we can't get them, then the only thing we really need is something which can act as proof of the child's date of birth. And one of those things can be what is called an I-94. That's the form JFCS can provide to the Education Committee. Also, an assurance form would work. JFCS can also provide that form. They need 2 proofs of residency. So they will have a lease that they can use as one proof, and something like a utility bill in their name could be the other proof. And they will need immunization records. So usually, I'll stay here. So usually the children are arriving with their immunization records because they need those vaccines to come to the US. But on rare occasions, they might not have them all. If that's the case, it's okay because every family will have a health checkup within the first 30 days of arriving. And if they do need additional vaccines, they can get them at that appointment. So this is just a little note to say that each district is different. And if the school isn't very familiar with enrolling refugee children, they may need some extra support from JFCS or the sponsorship group to understand the different requirements. So we can help give them that information if they don't already have it. And they will probably ask for additional documents, and we can create those. A lot of those are things that we can fill out with the parents and an interpreter. So it's okay to provide whatever we can. And some schools may have a rule like no phones allowed, but usually if we ask for an exception, like a 9th grader, for example, maybe he could use his phone to use Google Translate the first few days. So he could ask things like, where's the bathroom, or where's my next class? So he doesn't feel so stressed. Some like Susan was mentioning earlier, we can advocate for them to have additional support. And if there are any issues, we have additional information that we can use. For example, sometimes families arrive with someone who is a niece or nephew rather than a son or daughter. And there are some different laws. When it says unaccompanied minors, this is saying their parents aren't with them. So they might try to ask for some proof that the aunt and uncle are the legal guardians. And if that happens, we will have our legal department help us with that. And as Lindsay was saying, schools will also translate documents for parents who don't speak English, but if they don't already speak, if they don't already read and write in their own language, it's not helpful. So they will have interpreters there to communicate with the parents, and that is a requirement. And some of the children will be not quite old enough for school, but they might still be eligible for additional programs like Head Start, pre-K counts. So there's some options that we can look at, and we can look more into that once we know the ages of the children in the family that you will sponsor. Also, schools may have after school or before school programs that might be helpful. Some schools have free breakfasts, which is often nice for the children to have. So that's things that the education committee can look into. So let's talk a little bit about learning a new language as an adult and tutoring adults. Has anyone here, and anyone can answer, has anyone ever studied a new language as an adult? And if so, what helped you learn?
Duolingo is amazing. I don't know whether they will have the language we need from the other direction to do an ESL, but if they're going to have a smartphone, boy, it's just a great way to do it.
Duolingo is helpful.
I learned Spanish via Berlitz. I mean, this was years ago because I lived in Mexico City for a year. And when I was there, people wanted to practice their English, so that wasn't very helpful. So I moved in with a family that only knew Spanish. And it was amazing how quickly I learned it when I had to.
Oh, great. Yeah, those are both great. Duolingo is very helpful. One thing that's a little disappointing with Duolingo is it doesn't have every language.
Right.
But if the family happens to speak Arabic, there is one for Arabic. So if their language is supported, I think it's a great tool. And the idea of getting to practice in real life with other people is so helpful. So that's great. And does anyone have any ideas about if you decide to tutor the family or an adult in the family, what might affect the pace of the class? Anyone can answer.
Well, if they're somewhere working where they have to be speaking English some of the time, that's going to speed things up.
Definitely.
And this is a silly old example. Itzhak Perlman said that he learned English by watching I Love Lucy reruns when he came here as a boy. So if they have a television and are able to watch that kind of entertainment television, they'll begin to get vernacular English.
Yeah, definitely. Entertainment is a great way to learn English. Yeah, that's wonderful. And one thing some of the people had mentioned earlier was literacy in their first language. So if we learn that they do not read or write in their first language, then the classes might focus more on speaking and listening rather than trying to learn to read first, so they can have conversational English abilities. And if they didn't have formal education, the concept of a classroom might be new to them. So don't be surprised if they seem to enjoy a slower pace than you expected. Whatever pace they're comfortable at will be a great pace to follow. And I'll just mention, if there are other free ESL classes in your area, feel free to connect the family with those as well. They don't have to only have Literacy Pittsburgh as their ESL.
Alina,
class.
I did have a question about that.
Sure.
It sounds like there's a strong partnership with Literacy Pittsburgh, and their training is spectacular. I didn't do the ESL, but I did the regular literacy training. It sounds like the confidentiality we have to keep in general is a little loosened when we are interacting with them so that they can help the family. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
If
thank
we're
you.
with a partner like Literacy Pittsburgh or Squirrel Hill Health Center, those people you could share information relevant to what they're doing. Yeah, good question. Okay, great. I'm going to skip this last one, this last question here. I have some resources listed like Duolingo. Dari and Pashto are the two most common languages in Afghanistan. And I had those listed for when we had mostly Afghan clients. And I have some additional resources and I can share those with the educational committee later. Are there any other questions about the education portion of sponsorship before we go on to the next module?
I guess, I apologize. I have one quick question,
Sure.
which is, would it be helpful if some of us took the Literacy Pittsburgh ESL training, even if we don't get matched with our family? I don't know, is that something that might be helpful to take the literacy training?
I think so. I took the literacy training many years ago, maybe back in 2014 or 15, and I thought it was very helpful. I'm sure the ESL training is also really good. So I think it would be extremely helpful.
And just in general, I know we're all volunteering time for this. It was so personally rewarding to work as a literacy tutor one-on-one with somebody and help them deal with whatever their challenges were. So ESL or regular, it's amazing and really a good thing to do. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, great question. Great. Any other questions before we continue? All right. If you think of any, you can always ask at the end as well. So let me go back here. I have a quick pop quiz question for you. Oops, sorry, let me start presenting. Okay. Here. So does anyone remember the name of where adults get their free ESL classes? And anyone can answer.
Literacy Pittsburgh.
Perfect. Okay. And what are any of the differences you remember between enrolling a U.S. citizen in school versus a child who recently arrived as a refugee?
Well, the forms of proof they're available for immunization for age are probably going to be different.
Yes,
for
exactly.
Kids, for immigrants.
Perfect. You got it. All right. So module 8, if you look over here, it says benefits and medical, employment, administrative, financial, and transportation committees. So it looks like a really, really full module, but a lot of these are very, very flexible and up to each committee to decide, which is why there's not too much for any of these individual committees, but we are going to chat about them a little bit. So JFCS your group does not need to have a medical committee or a benefits committee, but you can if you would like to. We have medical and benefits caseworkers. For example, one caseworker will do medical and benefits, and another caseworker will do medical and benefits. So we will have two to do those things. And the other caseworker, and we did decide it will be me, I will also be helping with this. But if anyone, I know some of you work in the medical field, some of you might know a lot about benefits. So if you would like to help, that would be great also. I think Susan had mentioned helping talk to the family about the importance of, and Susan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe having a primary care physician and preventative measures they can take to stay or to keep from getting ill. Is that the idea you had?
Well, I think the concepts here are different than they are in other countries in that we have something called primary care, which is preventive care. And in other countries, they don't really have that. They just go to see the doctor or the provider when they're sick. And so that whole idea for kids going in for routine visits is a little different. So I think we'd have to sort of try to orient people that way, and adults as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea of how you could help. And this is something you can think about over the next couple weeks. It's not something you have to decide now. For the
Hey,
Oh yeah, go
Elena,
ahead.
real quick question. When you, on the last one, it said benefits, I'm assuming those are social service benefits, things like food stamps or Medicaid. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that's
Oh.
correct. Mhm. Yes. All right,
But
good
and you
question.
can help us navigate the government bureaucracy to register for those. You folks know how to do that. Okay.
Yes, so there's two ways. There's an application you can fill out on paper, or there's an online way to do it. And although I'm tempted to use the online way, we use the paper method because we can submit it directly to a caseworker, a governmental caseworker, not a JFCS caseworker, and our clients will be able to get their benefits more quickly that way. So that's the reason we don't use the online portal. But there is one that exists. So if you're ever asking people and they're referencing an online portal, there is one you can use to apply for benefits, but we use the paper application method. And
yeah, that's fine. Well, I'm sure we'll since it's medical and benefits, it's kind of perhaps fall under my wife, and well, I'm sure we'll be happy to use your existing methods.
Sure. Yeah, it's one form for the food stamps as well as Medicaid and something called cash assistance. And not every client will apply for cash assistance. And I'll explain to anyone on this committee in more detail why and when that would happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good question. You're welcome. So for the administrative committee and the financial committee, usually the administrative committee is the point people and they help track the other committees. And the financial committee usually tracks the donations and the money raised and dispersed for the family. And it seems from what I've seen that you already have a very, very good handle on the administrative committee. And I'm basically here to support you in what you think will work best. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer. And you could ask now or later. Any questions at this time for these two committees?
I have a quick question. So I would assume WIC, women, infants, and children, those benefits, we'd apply for that if they're young children also, right?
Yes. If they were eligible, we could apply for WIC as well. Yeah, good question. Any other questions here? All right. So for this is something that's a conversation. And I think for your congregation, you may already have a funding source for the money. Do you have ideas about what type of items people might like to donate? And it's okay if you haven't had a chance to talk about it yet. But I just wondered, do you have people expressed interest in donating clothing or furniture yet?
Yeah, we have a bunch of people who want to give us furniture.
And I think that the deacons have already made a comment about wanting to do something in the way of soliciting donations from the congregation to involve people.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah, actually,
it's made me question again. We talked a little bit about this last time about the confidentiality of our family. I think that if those kind of requests are going to be because our congregation wants to be engaged. Mm-hmm. So, I think we've got to all hold hands at some point about what it is we're going to share with the congregation, because if we decide that we can say ages of children, great. If we can include names, great. If we need to limit that, then let's all say, you know, if the answer is, well, ages or names, well, I can't decide to share ages and have John decide to share names, you know, so like, I worry about involving our congregation who seems like they want to be involved and then messing up on the confidentiality part when we do involve them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's a good conversation to have, and I will confirm what the exact rules are so that you know the limitations when you have the conversation.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. That's an excellent point. I hadn't really focused on that at all. We are going to have the chairs are going to talk on after this meeting. So let's just make sure we bring that up at the chair meeting to be sure that everybody's on the same page. I really hadn't thought about that at all. You know, I was also going to say, Susan's on a deacon. Susan, you want to take a moment just to share with the group what the deacons had to say at your last deacon meeting?
Well, Lena, we have this thing called deacons at our church, and these are the people that sort of care for the congregation. We had a meeting last week, and in that meeting, you know, we were just talking about what we're doing with the refugee planning, and everybody on that committee was very, very excited about the possibility of donating items and or money. Somebody suggested gift cards. They suggested a gifting tree, you know, designated items. So I do feel like we do have a lot of support around maybe, you know, once and done kind of thing or ongoing gifts. That's it.
Yeah, that's great. I was reading one of the emails about the ideas, and I like the ideas a lot so far. Sorry, I missed the very last sentence of what you said, trying to navigate my computer's mute button, which it looks like I cannot navigate while I'm sharing the screen. So I apologize if you're hearing some background noises.
Okay.
Okay, well, so I'll just talk to you a little bit about the funds that the refugees will have when they arrive from the government. So every individual will have $1,025 given to them to help them start their lives here. So as you can imagine, it's not very much. If it is a single individual, that's really all they have for a security deposit and first month's rent. So it really doesn't go far. If the family has 4 people, they would have $4,100, and they could share that. And if you see this maximum, the $200 difference is meant for if they have additional needs, like maybe they have an emergency and they need to purchase some item to help them with this, and they can have up to $200 more than this initial amount to help pay for that. So that's why there's some variation. But if the client is sponsored, which of course they will be for you, they wouldn't have access to that extra $200. But sponsor groups often have questions about who will administer these funds, and JFCS will administer them, and they will use them to pay for the security deposit as well as the rent for however many months they can pay before the money runs out. And we ask that the sponsorship group use the money they raise to pay for the other items. Of course, if raising money is an issue, we can also ask for support from other groups. We don't want the amount of money to we don't want sponsorship groups to feel limited if they aren't able to raise funds to cover the other aspects. And of course, the families are expected, if there are employable adults, they are expected to find a job and begin working within the first 90 days. at that point, they would be able to help paying their own rent and utilities and becoming more and more self-sufficient.
So, and
Elena,
I have a
what's your
question.
experience?
Go ahead, Carol. Sorry.
I'm sorry. What's your experience with families as they come in? I'm just trying to, think through our planning of the budget. As if we do have the expectation that they're employed within 90 days, then they're going to be contributing to their rent. But would you expect within the first year or the first X, period of time that at some point they really are self-sufficient and able to afford their own rent and livelihood? Or how does it play out for these families, like after a year or so? Typically.
Yes. Typically, they would be able to become self-sufficient. If they're having more difficulties, if they have additional barriers to that, they might stay on welfare and have benefits from the government longer. And that could be, for example, because maybe the two parents are employable, but maybe it's a very large family, and they need a larger living area to support, for example, 11 children, because we do have some families that are much larger than what we are often used to here. They need more food. So if they had a situation like that, they might stay on welfare longer, and they might have housing that is also part of their benefits. But if there isn't a situation like that, then many of them are very successful in becoming self-sufficient over time, and some can do it more quickly than others. It depends a lot on many factors, like the size of the family, their health, their background, their education, their language ability, things like that. So, yeah, good question.
I have a question, and you may have already answered this, but this $1,025, is that a month per person?
No, it's a one-time.
Oh, it's a one-time. Okay. And
Yeah.
does this come from Westminster, or does this come from the government? Where does this come from?
This comes from the government, and it is called the reception and placement money, and it's meant to be spent in the first 3 months. So
So it's a one-time deal, and it's from the government.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Well, Elena, one of the challenges that we talked about with the deacons is that when you think about the fact that the mattresses have to be new, the car seats have to be new, a crib has to be new, that's a lot of new things that we can't get donations for. So if you have a family of 6, that's thousands of dollars for all of that stuff. So is that money, that's money I would assume that we need to have ready to go prior to the family's arrival. Once we know but we have to have the money ready to go so we can buy that stuff for the housing, right?
Yeah. Most of the money will probably be used up front for those items, the beds, car seats, because they can be expensive because they have to be new.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I think that is what we're intending to provide in our, as we were told, to have available between $8,000 and $12,000. So I think that's the range of that is what Westminster as a church realizes we need to do. And through our outreach commission, we're gonna make sure that there is that base of money. Now, any donations will be greatly welcomed beyond that, but that's what Westminster is intending to provide. So,
And this is
just
on
to-
top of the getting started money that the government provides.
Correct.
Westminster is on top of it. Okay.
And Carol and I have already talked to Rich Mills, our financial officer, to determine, create a what's called a restricted account where this would find its place and then we can draw upon it. And Carol, as chair of the finance, will be the conduit for that.
Mhm. Yeah, great. And I have also in here some more information about that money, the reception and placement money from the government. We often call it R&P money for short. You might hear others calling it per capita money. Both are common terms to refer to that money from the government. Oops, sorry. Oops, I'm going the wrong direction. Here. So this information here is for a client who's not sponsored. So typically we will spend it on rent, bedding, the necessary items for the home, and a cell phone for the adults, usually a mom and a dad, but it could look a little different. The furniture, cleaning supplies. And so that money gets spent quickly. And we do get donations, which helps a lot. But the donations can be sporadic. They aren't always there. So we'll use donations when we have them. For sponsored families, it helps a lot because then they can save more of their R&P money for rent. So they have a little bit more of a cushion. They don't have to feel so stressed about finding a job as quickly as possible because they're getting a little extra financial support.
Elena, I thought you had said a couple times ago that the adults were provided a phone by JFCS, but it sounds like it comes out of their money, or are you all just providing it?
No, yeah, JFCS purchases it with their R&P money. So it is their own money, but we're purchasing it before they arrive. So they have it for that first night. If they happen to already have a phone and they don't want their money to be used on it, that's okay. We can keep that same phone and give it to another client. We'll just change the name. And that happens occasionally, not very often. Usually the refugee families, as opposed to the Afghan parolees, they usually do not have a phone that will work. Yeah, good question. So this is just talking a little bit more about how it's important to have that extra financial support from the sponsors. And this is an example budget for a family of 6. So this is an example for a family that's not sponsored. So they have about $6,000 something for their family, about $1,000 per individual. And you can see what we spent it on. This is a real family that we had. And so the beds were about $1,000 for all of them, all 6 members. We paid for some groceries, and you can see it's not much. So you can assume that there was additional food provided by donors. This $5 is probably something like a phone case. This family had a washer and dryer. That's not very common because sometimes they're in an apartment complex where there are washer dryers, or they live close to a laundromat. So we can assume that this family didn't have a laundromat nearby, and they did not have an apartment complex with washer dryers. Oh no, here's the phone case here. So you can see, you can see what it looks like for a typical budget. And I have this in a PDF. I think I sent it to maybe the point people earlier, but I can share it for anyone who's interested in looking at it a little more in depth, what it looks like for a family without a sponsor, but you are able to see additional groceries here. So it looks like from the groceries, we can guess that this family was from somewhere in Africa. The pocket money is something that we are mandated to provide. This comes from their per capita money, and that's just so they can have cash on them in case of an emergency. This is their security deposit. So you can see that this family lived in Crafton. And you can see that the total amount for all of these items, including money for rent, was just over $6,000. So that's the $1,000 per member of the clients. So this is what it would look like to spend most of the, or to spend all of the money regularly. Or sorry, all of the money ahead of, for a family without a sponsorship group. And you can see that this rent is, it's not much. And now they're expected to find jobs to pay for future months of rent.
Alina, is there a standard for that pocket money that comes out of their RNP?
Yes, it is. It's the same for every client. And I believe it is $50 per person. Yes. Yeah, it's $50 per person. And,
okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So there are some groups that can help help the money go farther. One is Off the Floor. I think I mentioned them before during the information about the housing committee. For $110, they will furnish the entire home, which is a very affordable price. And I've seen their furniture. It's usually very nice. It doesn't match, but I think it looks great. However, each sponsorship group may choose to use donations from their own members for a few reasons. One, it helps people feel more involved, and a lot of people really have love for their furniture items and want them to go to someone they know is in need. Also, Off the Floor recently, it's been taking them longer. So if you are trying to make sure the home is furnished within 2 weeks, they might not be able to furnish it within such a short time frame. So it's something the housing committee can think about, probably together with the financial committee and the point people, to decide if Off the Floor is something that your group would want to use or not. And either choice is good. So it would just really be up to what you think is best. So the employment committee and the transportation committee I've put together because I wanted to talk about the challenges for each. And we can share as a big group, what challenges do you foresee, both for employment and for finding transportation? Because they kind of are linked.
I bet nobody here has taken a bus recently. Nobody on our committee.
Speak for yourself, John.
Yeah, exactly.
Not many, though.
No, you're right, not many.
Then that's of course that's a challenge. There's not a lot of familiarity with transportation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And jobs aren't always on a bus route, nor are places to live.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
Now, transportation committee is separate from the driving committee, correct? Correct?
It would be the same committee. You could call it driving committee, and it's very flexible. So you could have people on this committee who do only driving, or you could have some people who want to help the family learn to ride the bus, or the cultural orientation committee might be the ones that help train them to use the bus. It's really up to whatever makes the best sense for your group. At JSCS, our employment team often will help them learn to take the bus to their job. And if the employment team isn't able to do it because they're too busy, then the caseworker will teach them how to take the bus to get to their job. But as you said, it can be hard if they aren't near a bus line, which is why it's so important that we do find housing near a bus line and that the employment is also accessible by bus. Or walking would be great if there's somewhere within walking distance, but that can be tricky sometimes. So this is just an opportunity to discuss how your group could help adults in the family obtain employment. And I think what I'll do is I'll let you think about that during a 5-minute break. So let's take our break here. Think about the question on your break if you want to. And when you come back, we will discuss it. So I will see you all in 5 minutes, and I'll be here during the 5 minutes in case you want to ask any questions.
Kara suggests, am I muted? They mute me.
So I have a quick question.
Sure.
I know we're supposed to do things like driving. You say there have to be 2 of you, or does it like, because that takes up 2 spaces out of 5 in my car.
Yeah, there don't have to be. You might sometimes decide you want to. For example, if it's a single adult female.
If I'm taking, a gentleman someplace, I'd rather have somebody with me.
Yes.
But if it's a family, it's okay.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So the rules are kind of flexible depending on comfort level too, once we know them,
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yes. And both the family's comfort level and the sponsor's comfort level.
Yes. I mean, I would get approval on whatever, whatever we were doing or whatever. I'm just thinking, how do I put, it's different in my husband's car that, I could fit 7 of us, which is great, but if he's out of town, it takes up,
Yes,
2 of
definitely.
5 places,
And if there are small children who need car seats, the car seats themselves can take up more than the space of 1 adult. So that can make things tricky too.
Right. 3 across the back of I have a Nissan Rogue. It's like moderate size, but 3 car seats, they're pretty big now. So, okay.
Definitely.
I have a large van. Right now it has 10 seats in it. And I've taken 5 seats out because I have a very big bicycle that I put in it. But I have enough room to seat 10 people and some aisle space where we can put luggage. So I can handle big groups if you have that need. And
great.
whether it's our family or some other family. So I'll make my car available at least when I can.
And you as a driver.
And me as a driver. And it has a very good GPS system in it, so I can find almost anything bigger than a head of a pin.
Oh, that's great. Oh yeah, that's very helpful because many of the families are larger in number.
And but I don't have any car seats because my kids are all in college, or my grandchildren are all in college, and so I don't have seats for little people.
But they have to be new ones anyway, don't they? Is that true? They have to be new?
They do have to be new. The other sponsorship group, Oakmont Presbyterian, said there was a program at Children's Hospital that could provide new car seats at lower cost. I have to ask them the name of the program, but that's where they got their car seats, and they said it was a good program, and I think they explained about how to install them. So it can be tricky to install car seats. So
many volunteer fire departments do that.
Yes.
Because they're my backup. I have a car seat in my car right now waiting to be installed. If my nephew doesn't do it, I'm taking it to the volunteer firefighters. And I think most departments do that. Certainly in the city of Pittsburgh, I'm sure they would.
Oh, definitely.
And then you know they're in right, because it's tricky.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it would be very helpful to have them come and show the drivers and ahead of time if possible, or with the family after the family's arrived. I think that would be helpful. I needed a couple of tutorials to feel comfortable.
Yeah,
doing
I
that.
think almost all the local fire departments do that. I have friends who went to the Peters Township one and got the instructions on it.
Yes.
While I have offered my van, I am also retired and I don't have a regular job to go to. So, but I have a wife who likes me to take her places
Okay, never mind that.
wild and crazy places. So I'm mostly available.
I have a
Great.
question. Are there times when we would need to take an interpreter in the car with us?
Potentially, yes. So it would really depend on the interpreter. If they have their own vehicle, they often would drive themselves, but some of them may not. And if it's better to come in person, they may request a ride. It would really be up to you and the interpreter to decide if you are willing to give them a ride as well.
Okay.
I've done it occasionally, and our interpreters are usually very, very sweet, very helpful. So,
Because
okay,
I
great.
figured we would just need to factor that in as one of the passengers then.
Yes, yes. Yeah, good question. Good thoughts. Okay, I'm going to share. And so you may have had a chance to think about how your group could help. I'm going to share the list of ideas the employment team shared with me. They said that if the sponsors were able to identify potential employment opportunities in the area, that would be great, because the employment team has a lot of connections with larger companies, but they don't know about most of the smaller local ones. So if you had any ideas or contacts that you thought could be good for potential employment, that would be great.
Ilana, Lena,
Yeah.
when you say employment team, are you here referring to the JFCS?
Oh, good
employment folks?
question. Yes,
Okay.
I am. So we have 3 people on the JFCS employment team, and they are split with 1.5 person each into 2 different parts of employment. And it just depends on if they are going into one of 2 programs. And it depends on various factors that aren't really that important, because they both will help them find employment. But they said that if the sponsor groups are able to help the adults create a resume, it would be helpful. If they can help with job searches, filling in applications, doing practice interviews, that would be helpful. The employment team can do this as well. So don't feel like you're all on your own, but if the sponsors are up for this, it would be great. And once they're employed, because refugees can sometimes struggle to keep a job because, for example, maybe they think they understand the bus, but then they miss their stop and get lost and can't get back. So it can be hard for them, especially initially, to when a small mistake turns into a bigger deal, and they might lose their first job just due to a small mistake like that. So we can offer them additional support. So maybe they get lost and we tell them, if you get lost, you can call this person on this day and they'll help find you. Or if they're available, maybe they'll pick you up that day. Things like that. And that would be flexible depending on what the capacity was of the sponsorship employment committee and the needs of the family. And so some of these things to consider we've already talked about, like how the drivers could provide bus training if they wanted to, or the cultural orientation committee could do this. But other things that would be great to offer rides to would be doctor's appointments, school appointments, the grocery store. On the other side, the idea is always self-sufficiency. So it's great to offer these rides, especially initially, but don't be afraid to start tapering off when it's appropriate. And it could be at different times for different families. And you can be in communication with the family about this. Like, do you feel comfortable trying to go to the store on the bus by yourself this time? What is your goal? Should we go with you 2 more times? And then the next time you try it on your own, but you have our number if you get lost. So you can make a plan together with the family to have them rely less on getting rides, because you don't want to overwhelm your sponsorship group. You want them to be feeling prepared for the full year, not having to provide rides every month, but tapering off over time. And we also talked about some considerations like the gender of the passenger and driver. Maybe if there's a male driver driving a woman alone, it might be nice to have another woman in the car, maybe another woman from the sponsorship group, so she feels comfortable. If you are training the adults how to use the bus, they can use Google Maps as a tool to see where the bus is in relation to the city, but talk with the adult first and assess if they're able to use technology well, because if that's also new for them, it won't be very helpful. If they have trouble reading in their first language, then you'll want to incorporate the use of landmarks to help them orient themselves, for example. Also, their individual confidence level will affect how quickly they want to become independent. And be careful that you're showing them, not telling. Even if you have an interpreter, if they are doing it and not only watching you doing it, it will help them remember better. And we already talked a lot about car seats. So just remember this is something the drivers can help teach the adults how to use, because the adult may need to take an Uber at some point when no one from the sponsorship group is around. So it will be important that they learn how to use the car seats. It doesn't have to happen right away, because you don't want to overwhelm the family either. So that wraps it up for the overview of those committees. Do you have any questions about those committees? No. All right, great.
Wait,
Well
this
then,
is Susan.
Yeah.
Is that the assessment, the employee assessment, is that always done in person or is that done via Zoom?
Oh, that's a good question. It's actually done via phone with the employment team at JFCS.
Okay.
Yeah, so it might look like someone from the sponsorship group helps them or sits with them and listens in on the assessment, so they can more easily help coordinate with the employment team, the employment search. Or it could just help them use the phone to answer if they aren't used to phones. Many of the clients we have have basic knowledge of how to use the phone, so it will depend on the individual. Good question.
And potentially a third party being there to translate.
Yes, and that person, you could have an interpreter there with you, or what we normally do is JFCS will have them on the call as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so let me share my screen. I just have a quick pop quiz to wrap up Module 8. So I'll just read it. You are driving a mom and baby from your sponsored family to a doctor's appointment. You helped the mom secure the baby safely in the car seat before leaving. However, 5 minutes after beginning to drive, you look back and see she's carrying the baby in her lap. what would you do in this situation? And anyone can answer.
Pull over and get the baby back in the car seat.
Yep.
Yes. Good. Good. Yes, you got it. So when it's safe to do so, pull over. And you might need to call an interpreter to help explain. But yes, that will be important. And it may happen. It takes some getting used to use the car seats all the time and use the seat belts all the time. Great. All right, so let's talk about Module 9. This is our final module, and it is about the Cultural Orientation Committee. And don't worry if this seems very fast, because I will also meet with the Cultural Orientation Committee separately to go more in depth and even to teach these topics with them the first few times until they're comfortable doing it on their own. So just to remind everyone what it is, the Cultural Orientation Committee is the group that will teach classes about American culture, laws, norms, and other things. And we have certain topics that are required, and then we have topics that aren't required but are still a really good idea to teach. Does anyone have any ideas about topics you think might be mandatory? And feel free to guess.
Well, I think the laws that they might need to know about that, in just everyday life.
Yes, great. You got it. Yeah, the laws are mandatory to learn about, and they're one of the most important ones. And as you said, everyday life is very important as well. This is a list of the required topics for refugees on the left, and a very, very similar but slightly different list of topics for Afghan parolees. So those you can think of as refugees from Afghanistan, but they have a slightly different legal designation. So as I said before, most of the Afghan clients on the military bases have already been resettled. So most likely you will not be matched with an Afghan family. But if you were, they would have this extra topic, parole status. This is just slightly different from a refugee status, and that's the main difference. Also, the health and hygiene topics have been combined into one. But more likely, you'll be matched with the refugee family. So they will learn about the role of JFCS and what JFCS will do. And because they're sponsored, we will also add role of the sponsorship group. So they know what the sponsorship group will help them with. Other topics include the importance of learning English to adjust to life here, learning about welfare, like government benefits and how that can help them get on their feet, US laws. This topic, your new community, is a really important one, and it will be unique to the neighborhood. So some of these, it might make sense to use a PowerPoint. Others, it might make more sense to do outside walking around. For example, if you want to teach them about their new neighborhood, you can walk with them to the park, show them how to get there. You can show them the library, which is often a good resource, and just show them how they can actually get to the places in the community. So these topics are mandatory. The way you teach about them is not mandatory. I'm showing you a screenshot of the PDF for the Afghan clients. The one for refugee clients is almost identical. So we're just looking at this as an example. Both of them on the left have a content objective, and on the right, they have learning indicators. So this is for the role of JFCS. What do you think is the difference between the content objective and the learning indicators?
What's the content versus showing mastery?
Yes, exactly. So anything listed under the content objectives are what you have to teach them. And the learning indicators are, as she said, showing they have understood it. So I will share that PDF with the Cultural Orientation Committee so they can look at it in more detail. But let's look at an example PowerPoint. We'll use the one that is about the role of the resettlement agency. It shows the agenda, which is how JFCS will help them, basically, and also the roles and responsibilities, both for JFCS and for the client themselves. If you see HIAS, this is the group we partner with. It stands for Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, and they actually place the refugees with our agency or other local agencies around the country. So when we present to a group, we'll have all the caseworkers here and all the numbers they might need. And we'll have them actually take a picture of this so they have all the caseworkers' numbers. We also put the numbers, we put the numbers in their phones as well. But we like to sometimes repeat information in different ways just to make sure they have multiple opportunities to learn about it. For a sponsorship group, we could show them the names of the sponsors they're most likely to interact most often and their phone numbers. So when we're doing this in a group, we explain it's important to be able to contact your caseworker and that you can call or send a message on WhatsApp. If you're not familiar with WhatsApp, it's a messaging app for your phone. It's free and it's like text. It's like a text messaging thing. But many of our clients enjoy using it because it uses internet rather than the phone plan itself. So they can use it even if they have Wi-Fi, but they don't have service elsewhere, for example. And then we'll have them actually send a message to their caseworker to practice. And this is an opportunity for us to see how well they can use the phone, how comfortable they are with it. And this would be a good idea to do with the sponsors as well, to get them comfortable calling the sponsors that they'll have the most contact with. Then we'll show them that JFCS helps them find housing, they furnish it, they help pick them up at the airport, they help them get food initially. For sponsored families, we would do the same, but we would also include the sponsorship group name here and explain how they will help with these things. Another objective is to explain that JFCS is not the US government. So we have a graphic here to help show that. And here we're not expecting the clients to read this. This is more for the caseworker to use for their own notes as they explain. They will need an interpreter for the required topics for cultural orientation. But for the additional non-required topics, it's okay to not have an interpreter. For example, maybe you go to the park and you're teaching about how to use the playground equipment. That's not a required topic, but it is a nice thing to show them. You would not need an interpreter for that. And then these questions are to check their understanding. Did they master the objectives? So we would ask them questions like, is JFCS part of the US government? Yes or no? You might notice that these questions seem pretty tailored and direct. It's because some of them may have never been in a class before. We want them to feel comfortable answering. We don't want them to feel like they have to guess. So here's another screenshot of the objectives and learning indicators. I just want to point out that some of these are about domestic violence. Some of these are about sexual harassment. So if we are teaching about this, does anyone have any ideas about what considerations we might think about before teaching this topic? And anyone can answer.
I think you want to know the culture. What is the norm in their culture? And I guess we'd have to find that out from you all as well as maybe the interpreters. But, I know I work with kids and some of the parents just spank a lot. They spank their kids. They use that as a discipline. And that's not appropriate here. So maybe talking about that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. That would help a lot to know what's the norm in their country, because it can be very different. In some countries, schools can still use punishment such as hitting the child. So it would be important to explain that that's not allowed in schools. And yeah, it can look very different. Sometimes we decide to talk to the men and women separately, especially if it's a group class, because we find they feel more comfortable. Both genders feel more comfortable if they are separated for this topic. If you're doing this with just a single family, you could still consider doing it separately if you wanted. You could do it together. You could consider both ways and decide what you thought would be best. Here, this is about safety. This is another required topic, and you'll see that as part of being prepared for emergencies, the members of the household know their address. So if you were trying to teach them about this, does anyone have ideas about a good activity to teach this topic?
Practicing 911.
Definitely. Yeah, doing a role play, for example, where they talk to 911, and you'll have an interpreter. So you can definitely do that. You can have them practice repeating after you, know English, Spanish, or whatever language they speak. And you can even get them to listen and repeat their address. It's okay for them to say their address in their native language. For example, the house numbers. If the street name isn't a common word, they should practice saying that word as it really sounds. So
Can they just put it in their phone and then they can have it at their fingertip?
yes, definitely. You can put it in their phone. You can also have a recording on their phone so they can play that audio if they need to. This is especially helpful if they don't read and write in their native language. Yes.
True.
Yeah, good idea.
What about if they had a photograph of the front of their house that maybe has the house numbers on it and point to, and speak about, say, what the address is? Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Oh,
definitely. To piggyback off of that, Sandy, yeah, in preschool for my daughter, they laminated like her phone numbers and then just put it on a keychain. And we actually used that like all the way through her elementary school years. And it was nice. It was just like laminated cards, but like to have the pictures like that, it could be.
Yeah, that would be great. And it's a good idea to do multiple of these options, because you never know what learning style they have until you've worked with them for a while. And the more modes of input you give them as you teach, the better outcomes they'll have. And here's another example. For the safety class, we teach them about who can you call, and we give them different scenarios. Like you're in a car accident, you've had a headache for a while, the dog is loud. Why do you think we include this slide? And it's okay to guess, because
the stress level is high. Here they are, they're someplace. What do you do if something not right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't exactly ask for Tylenol or an aspirin if you had it, because you don't I mean, you wouldn't even know how to tell them that that's what you need,
Yeah, definitely. So it's really overwhelming when they come, and they might not realize what is a real emergency where I need to call 911. We don't want them calling a caseworker or a sponsor group member if someone is dying, because they really do need to call 911 right away in those situations. So this just helps teach them the best course of action for various things that could happen.
Well, and there's so many dogs here. Everybody has a pet.
Yes.
What if they have eaten or something? I don't know. Where they come from, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And dogs can be scary because, well, I love dogs. They're my favorite, but they can be dangerous. And if you're not used to them and you don't know, for example, not to put your face directly in front of the dog's face right away, I mean, even a friendly dog could be threatened by that and nip at a person. So that's another example of a cultural orientation topic that's not required, but would be very helpful, teaching them about common household pets like cats and dogs.
And
So-
having, if they don't notice, to have the insurance card and the license available, you know, and know where they are, and know that they have to get that information, especially if they were like rear-ended or something. Not to worry, because in Pennsylvania, it's the other guy's fault if they run into you. So, I mean, those kind of things. It's, I don't know how you convey all that, but it's a situation to begin with. And then if you don't know what's going to go on and you're not going to pay for a big difference.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and if they can drive already, that would be a whole nother cultural orientation area to focus on.
Drive on.
Yeah. So we already talked a little bit about the new communities. So that's just something to think about. If you're on the cultural orientation committee, how do you think it would be best to teach these different topics? And questions you can ask yourself going forward, we won't talk about them right now, is just, should I do this in the family's home? Should I take them to a second location, like the library? Should we do a walking class? Should they be together or separate? If it's a sensitive topic, like domestic violence or sexual harassment, should we consider having a woman teach the women and a man teach the man, including the interpreters? And when should we be doing this? How long is too long? I would recommend between 1 to 3 hours would be okay, but it could differ by family. So it's just something to think about. Are there any questions about cultural orientation? Well, if you do think of any, feel free to ask me later. But let's quickly, as our final pop quiz, what are 5 things you remember about cultural orientations? And anyone can shout out one thing at a time.
Well, you've got a laundry list. JFCS has a laundry list that will guide us. But the topics.
Yes, good. We have a list of topics.
Some topics are way more sensitive than others, and you have to appreciate the cultural differences as you have those conversations and the gender differences.
Yes, very true.
We want to learn about their culture a lot, all of us, before we start working with them.
Good. Great. Well, I think some of those had multiple ones, so excellent job. And oops, sorry. Here, I forgot. I'll share one last slide before we finish.
Alina, while you do that, once we know where the group comes from, I have lots of cultural literacy reference books. I'll do up a quick checklist for whatever culture we're getting.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, that would be wonderful. So now that we're done with the training, the next steps are to sign the commitment form. And I saw an email where there were some questions, and that's fine. We can definitely discuss the commitment form and in detail ahead of time. We want to make sure you fully understand and are comfortable with it. If you would like to volunteer in the meantime, you're welcome. You're already signed up, many of you, through Better Impact. I'll check tomorrow to see if there's anyone who might still need some help sending their clearances, and I can reach out to you if that is the case. But if you're already signed up with Better Impact, you could attend a volunteer. Actually, I think you don't have to because you've attended this training. I'll double check with our volunteer coordinator, but I believe you could even sign up to do some volunteering before getting matched if that's something you're interested in.
Hey, Elena, can I just interject here?
Sure.
For anyone who's got spare time, and if you're interested, it's a good thing to go through the volunteer training. I went through it with the woman who has a name I can't pronounce, and it's that training's good. I've never had time to do any of the volunteering, but I think it's a good thing. So anyone who's got a more capacity, I'd encourage you to do it.
Yeah, it is really nice training. And it would be a chance to meet other volunteers too. It's online also. And the third step would be to ask additional questions about anything at all related to sponsorship. There's also a green light form. The commitment form is more for the organization, and the green light form, I encourage everyone to look at it. It's basically a checklist of things that we hope you're comfortable with and understand before saying you're ready to sponsor a family. And if you're not comfortable or you're not sure about anything, then you could go back to 3, ask questions about it. And when everyone is comfortable, this one, just the point people have to sign, but I encourage them to make sure everyone in the group is comfortable with it. After it's signed, you can get matched with a family as early as 2 weeks after signing it. If there was a family before the 2 weeks that seemed like a really great match, we might mention it to you, but you're never required to accept a possible match. So we could say we have a family of 6. Do you think you're ready? And you could say yes or no. Either is fine. And we aren't going to push you to say yes because it's very important that you feel comfortable and ready. And then when you are ready and you do accept a suggested match, then we will tell you the details that we know, which will be names, ages, and the country of origin. Sometimes we have additional information, but usually not much. So we'll be able to tell you the language they speak or languages, because often they do speak more than one, even if English is not one of them. And we sometimes have some information about their educational background, but usually it's very, very limited. But that would be the next steps. And that concludes the training. So I am available for a little bit if you have any questions for me.
I had a question because when John was mentioning going through the volunteer training, I thought that's what this was.
Yes, so this is more extensive than the regular volunteer training. So this is the sponsorship training. It covers, I believe, all of the topics in volunteer training and then additional ones, which is why.
Is the other one in person?
No, it's also on Zoom. So that's why it's not required for you to take that as well, but it is a nice training. So you're welcome to take it if you would like to. And then you would meet our volunteer coordinator, who's very nice. Good questions. Okay, well, I think I'll stop recording